sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so get ready, because today we're doing a deep dive into something that's got the whole internet buzzing.
Yeah, this one's a doozy.
Elon Musk, a public gesture and a whole lot of controversy. If you haven't been following this closely, Musk caused quite a stir online when he was seen making what some are calling a Nazi salute at Trump's second inauguration.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We've got this Newsweek article that breaks the whole thing down, and we're going to try to figure out why this seemingly simple action has ignited such a firestorm.
It is fascinating, how a simple gesture can become so loaded, especially for someone like Musk, who's always under the microscope.
And the internet, it just blew up almost instantly. Accusations flying left and right. Figures like Sawyer Hackett and Owen Jones, they weighed in with some pretty strong opinions on X.
Yeah, social media, it just amplifies these things.
Yeah.
The speed and intensity of the reactions, it really shows just how sensitive things are, especially when it comes to, potentially offensive symbols.
And Musk, being Musk, he didn't exactly shy away from the controversy. He jumped on X, calling it a dirty trick, and basically dismissed the whole thing as people trying to smear anyone they disagree with.
But that raises a big question, though, doesn't it? Can you just brush aside the power of symbols like that? Even if you didn't mean any harm? I mean, there's a lot of history there. And the Newsweek article digs into the roots of what's often called the Roman salute.
Now, hold on a second. Roman salute. Didn't the Romans, build aqueducts and stuff? What's that got to do with this?
Right. It does sound a bit off, doesn't it? The article explains that while this gesture is often depicted in art about ancient Rome, there's actually no proof that the Romans ever used it. It's more of a romanticized idea that gained popularity in the 18th and 19th centuries through paintings and plays.
So it's like this made-up Roman thing that people just sort of ran with.
Exactly. And that makes you think, if they got that wrong, what else about history have we just accepted without questioning?
That's a good point. Okay, but we've got this Roman salute floating around in people's imaginations. So how did it go from togas and chariots to, something much darker?
Well, imagine you're a fascist movement in the early 20th century. You're trying to create a powerful image, as a symbol of strength and unity. You want to tap into this glorious past. And what better way to do that than by borrowing from the supposed might of the Roman Empire?
So they basically hijacked this romanticized idea of Rome and twisted it for their own agenda.
Precisely. And the Roman salute, with its strong visual impact, obedience and power, it fit perfectly into that narrative. It became a way to create a sense of belonging, to evoke a feeling of historical legitimacy, and unfortunately, to manipulate people.
That's actually pretty disturbing. So this gesture that Musk made, even if he didn't mean it the way some people think he did, it's still carrying all that baggage from history, right?
It is, and that's why people are reacting so strongly. It's not just a random hand movement. It's a symbol deeply tied to some of the worst events in human history.
Okay, so we've got Musk making this gesture, the internet going crazy, and this whole backstory about the Roman salute and its evolution into something much more sinister.
And this is where things get really interesting, because now we have to consider the context. If you just saw a clip of Musk with no background information, you might interpret it totally differently than someone who understands the history behind it.
Right. It's all about perspective and having all the pieces of the puzzle. And that's what this deep dive is all about.
Exactly. And that leads us to the million-dollar question. What was Musk's intention? Did he make this gesture knowingly, or was it just a careless mistake? The Newsweek article, it doesn't give us a definitive answer, but it does mention something really interesting. The Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, they actually weighed in on the situation.
Okay, let's hear it. What did the ADL have to say?
They posted on X saying that Musk's gesture seemed more like an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm rather than a deliberate Nazi salute. But they also highlighted how sensitive people are right now to this kind of symbolism.
So they're not letting him completely off the hook, but they're also not jumping to conclusions. I can see why people are on edge.
And that's why the ADL's perspective is so important here. They're experts on hate speech and symbolism.
Okay, so we've got Musk's gesture, the historical baggage, and the ADL trying to find some middle ground. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's important to remember that even if we give Musk the benefit of the doubt and say it wasn't intentional, his actions still have consequences, especially for someone with his level of influence.
Yeah, that's a good point. People look up to him. So even a seemingly small thing can have a big ripple effect.
Exactly. And that's something we're going to explore further as we continue this deep dive.
No, this whole thing, it really makes you think about how careful we need to be with symbols, especially when they're loaded with such heavy historical baggage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that actions can have unintended consequences, especially when those actions evoke memories of, painful historical events. And for someone like Musk, whose words and actions are constantly under scrutiny, the stakes are even higher.
Right. He's not just some random guy. He's a billionaire CEO with millions of followers hanging on his every word.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to consider the power dynamics at play here. Musk has this massive platform, and he can easily shape public perception of events. His wealth and influence, they give him a level of control over the narrative that most people just don't have.
So even if he didn't intend to cause harm, the fact that he dismissed the concerns so quickly and even joked about it, well, that sends a message, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that maybe he doesn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
Or the potential impact of his actions. Or perhaps that he simply doesn't feel the need to engage with those concerns seriously.
Which in a way is even more disturbing. It's like he's saying, I'm Elon Musk, I can do whatever I want and you can't touch me.
That's a dangerous message to send,
Yeah.
especially in a society where we're already grappling with issues of inequality and the abuse of power.
Okay, so we've talked about the gesture, the historical context, and the power dynamics at play. But let's zoom out for a second and consider the broader implications. What does this whole incident tell us about our relationship with history and the power of symbols in our society?
Well, for one thing, it shows how easily symbols can be manipulated and reinterpreted over time. What starts as a seemingly innocent gesture can become loaded with sinister meanings. And those meanings can stick even if the original intent was different.
Like with that whole Roman salute thing, it started as this romanticized idea, but then it got hijacked by fascists and turned into something truly horrifying.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of the history behind symbols, to understand how their meanings have evolved, and to be sensitive to the potential impact they can have. We can't just brush off historical baggage or pretend that symbols are neutral.
It also makes you think about how selective we can be with our outrage. There are so many injustices happening in the world every day. But this one incident involving Elon Musk seems to have captured everyone's attention.
That's true. And it's worth asking ourselves why. Is it because Musk is such a high-profile figure? Or is it because this particular symbol taps into deep-seated fears and anxieties about the rise of authoritarianism?
Maybe it's a bit of both. But I think it also speaks to a growing awareness of the power of symbols and how they can be used to promote harmful ideologies. People are more attuned to these things now, and they're not afraid to call out behavior that they find offensive or dangerous.
I agree. There's a heightened sensitivity to these issues, which is a good thing. But it also means that we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions or to demonize individuals without considering the full context.
Right. It's about finding that balance between being vigilant and being fair.
Exactly. And that's a challenge we all face in this era of social media and an instant outrage.
Thinking about this whole thing from Musk's perspective, I mean, he's obviously a brilliant guy, but maybe he's not as aware of the nuances of history and symbolism as he could be.
It's possible. And that's a reminder that even the most intelligent and successful people can have blind spots. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences, and those experiences shape how we see the world.
That's a good point. And it highlights the importance of empathy and understanding. We need to be willing to listen to each other, to acknowledge different perspectives, and to try to see things from other people's points of view.
Absolutely. And that's what makes conversations like this so valuable. We're not here to pass judgment or to tell anyone what to think. Our goal is to explore different angles, to raise important questions, and to encourage critical thinking.
So if we were to sum up the key takeaways from this deep dive so far, what would you say are the most important points for our listeners to consider?
Well, I think this incident serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of historical awareness and the lasting impact of symbols.
And it also highlights the power dynamics at play when high-profile individuals like Elon Musk are involved in these kinds of controversies.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, it underscores the need for open and honest dialogue, for empathy and understanding, and for a willingness to engage with complex issues without resorting to knee-jerk reactions or simplistic solutions.
Well said. And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how this incident might shape the conversation about symbolism and accountability moving forward. This whole situation with Musk, it feels like it's really opened up this broader conversation about symbols, their power, and the responsibility that comes with using them, especially for those with influence.
It has. And it's a conversation we need to be having. Symbols are powerful tools. They can inspire, unite, but they can also divide and cause harm. And in today's world where images and information spread so quickly, it's more important than ever to understand the weight they carry.
Yeah, one thing that's been kind of swirling in my head is, how this incident might change things moving forward. Will people be more cautious about certain gestures? Will we see more scrutiny of public figures and their actions?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think this incident has definitely raised awareness. People are paying more attention to the symbols being used around them, and they're more willing to speak up when they see something that's offensive or problematic.
Right. It's like we're all a bit more sensitive to the potential for harm given the historical context.
Yeah. And that sensitivity, while sometimes leading to, knee-jerk reactions, can also be a catalyst for positive change. It pushes us to have those uncomfortable conversations, to examine our own biases, and to hold each other accountable.
It's interesting, though, because Musk's response to the backlash was basically to just brush it off. He even made a joke about needing better dirty tricks, which didn't exactly go over well.
Right, and that speaks to another layer of this whole situation, the role of humor, and how it can be both a tool for deflection and a way to cope with difficult topics.
It's a fine line, isn't it? Sometimes humor can be a way to acknowledge the absurdity of a situation while still taking the underlying issue seriously. But when it's used to minimize or dismiss valid concerns, it can really backfire.
And in this case, I think Musk's attempt at humor might have inadvertently reinforced the idea that he's not taking the concerns about his actions seriously. It almost comes across as dismissive, especially given the historical weight of the symbol in question.
Which kind of circles back to what we were discussing earlier about power dynamics. Musk, with his vast wealth and influence, can afford to brush off criticism in a way that most people can't.
That's a valid point. It highlights the fact that accountability isn't always evenly distributed. Those with more power often have more leeway to make mistakes, to control the narrative, and to avoid facing the consequences of their actions.
So what does this all mean for the average person? If even someone like Elon Musk can seemingly get away with this kind of thing, what hope is there for holding others accountable?
That's a tough question, and I don't have an easy answer. But I think it's important to remember that power isn't absolute. Public pressure, collective action, and holding those in power accountable through our choices as consumers and citizens, those things can make a difference.
Right. It's a reminder that we're not powerless, even in the face of immense wealth and influence.
Exactly. And I think this incident has shown that people are paying attention. They're aware of the power of symbols. They're sensitive to the historical context. And they're willing to speak out against actions they find harmful or offensive.
It's like we're all becoming more mindful of the messages we're sending, both intentionally and unintentionally.
I think that's a positive takeaway from this whole situation.
Yeah.
It sparked a conversation that we need to continue having, a conversation about the power of symbols, the importance of historical awareness, and the responsibility that comes with wielding influence in a world that's constantly watching and reacting.
And ultimately, it's a conversation about creating a more just and equitable society where everyone is held accountable for their actions regardless of their wealth or status.
Well said.
Yeah.
And that's a goal worth striving for, even if the path to get there is complex and challenging.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Elon Musk and this controversial gesture, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. This incident has highlighted the potential for harm when symbols are used carelessly, but it's also shown that awareness and dialogue can be powerful tools for change. It's up to each of us to be informed, to be mindful, and to use our voices to create a world where symbols are used to inspire and unite, not to divide or cause pain. Thanks for joining us on this journey of exploration, and until next time, keep asking those tough questions.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.